Hello everyone, I am Lahari, a research scholar from RIE Mysore. Here we'll discuss about a seated question paper. So when we come to the seated question paper has 150 questions covering from three different subsections like child development and psychology, areas and languages. So in our first video, we'll discuss about the child development and psychology. In this, again this child development and psychology, shortly known as CDP, is divided into three subsections. One is child development, which consists of 15 marks, and the next subsection is inclusive education, which has 5 marks, and the next subsection is pedagogy and learning. It has 10 marks. Now, today's video we will discuss about child development, that is the first subsection in CDP, and the topic is concept of development and its relationship with learning. And this is a common portion in both paper 1 and paper 2 of CTET. Now let us start with the definition or understanding about the concept of development. In simple words, concept of development means a series of changes related to growth and moves towards the maturity. So development can be ascribed or described as a growth in both physical, mental, emotional state of an individual. Next, we will see about the definitions of various thinkers about the development. First, we will see the definition given by J.E. Anderson. Development is concerned with growth as well as those changes in behavior which results from environmental situations. So when we try to break this definition given by J.E. Anderson, we can understand that development is not only about the growth, it also talks about the behavioral aspects like how the environment is affecting the development. Like for example, the child who has got a good environment or a positive environment with love, care, the child is seen to develop more confidence. But the same way, if the child has been scolded or punished always, the child may end up in having inferiority complex or fear, anxiety. So this is how the environment also affects the development process. Next definition is by Heinz Werner. So the development consists of two processes, integration and differentiation. So what is this means by the term integration and differentiation? First, let us look into the term differentiation. It is like, actually it's more like a sequencing. First the child learns what are simple words, or the child tries to when the child starts talking, the child picks up simple words. Then the child goes to making them into a small sentences. Then the child's language will be developed. So that is differentiation. It goes more from a general to the specific. Now when it comes to the integration, in the integration the child has to integrate various other things and form a concept. For example, if we are talking about language development, that is speaking and writing, here the child has to first get the vocabulary, then the child has to know what is the language structure, grammar, that these are all the specific skills that are differentiation, and the child should also try to integrate these and form sentences, think, and then the child also should know how to write, then writing. So all this comes under the integration. So different skills which the child has learned, the child will be able to integrate it and use them in the daily life. So this is how the development consists of two processes, integration and differentiation. Now let us look into the types of development. First one is the physical development. If you see the title, that is physical development, it itself gives you an idea that it is the observable changes in the child, like the body development, height, weight of the child. If we see the toddler, always when we go to the doctor will be saying what is the height of the child and is the weight of the child appropriate to the height and as well as the age. That is the body development. Then we have the motor development, which has two aspects, that is gross motor skills and the fine motor skills. In the gross motor skills, we have walking, jumping, catching. Then in fine motor skills, we have painting, writing, drawing. These are very fine and very specific. And next we have the coordination and balance. So these are the aspects of physical development. It links more to the observable aspects of the child's development. The next comes the cognitive development. This has understanding and awareness about the environment. This links more to the brain development, how the child is thinking, problem solving, innovation, curiosity, imagination, memorizing the information, retrieving it whenever is needed. All this comes under the cognitive development. If we observe the small baby, the memory of the baby will be different from the memory of a teenager or an adult. So the process of development is continuous and it is changing. So these all comes under the cognitive development. And the curiosity part, and if you observe, small children will be asking more questions and they are curious about the environment around them. They try to observe, they try to imitate adults. All this comes under the cognitive development. Then next we have another type of development, that is social and emotional development. So this is more related to the understanding of the emotions, how to deal with them, how to communicate with peers, family, and developing the social skills like sharing, cooperation, patience, etc. So how this is seen? If we see in the child, first the child starts to cry. For anything the child cries, hungry, angry, even when the child is sleepy, the child cries. That is the form of communication the child is showing or communicating with the people or the family around. But then slowly the child starts to show different emotions like anger, smile. Then the child tries to relate with the people. Then the child starts speaking small words. Then like that the communication is happening, and the child also starts to share the toys or the books or the things which are given to the child with others. So these are all the social skills. And also the child also tries to or this the development, the individual also tries to find what are those emotions they are going through, how to handle them. So this part relating to the emotional and social connections will come under the social and emotional development of the aspect of the development. The next we have moral development. So this moral development talks more about the ethics, moral principles, what is right, what is wrong, how to make judgments, what is a classroom discipline, what are the classroom rules, regulations. All this comes under the moral development of the child. For example, if child has seen a pencil or an eraser that is on the table, and he or she has observed that nobody has taken it. So the child trying to take it for themselves is one action, and the child going and giving it to the teacher and asking the teacher to find out whose this is, someone has forgot, this is another aspect. So these kind of moral judgments, all this comes under the moral development. The ethics, the principles, and what are the family ethics the child has got, all this comes under the moral development. And the classroom rules. So the teacher may say, when the teacher enters the class, everyone has to stand up. So these kind of things, everything comes under the moral development. The next we have language development, that is interacting with others through different modes of communication, writing, speaking, sign language. So there are various ways in which a child can communicate with the other people around, that may be teacher, friend, family. So all this, the child learns how to communicate with them. First the child starts to speak, then comes the writing, and the sign language is kept because if the child has a problem in hearing, the child may use the sign language. So these are different types of development we have seen. First comes to recall physical development, then we have seen cognitive development, then we have seen socio-emotional development, then we have seen moral development and language development. So in terms of seated perspective, if we are seeing, mostly the questions may be like a scenario or a situation may be given and asked which kind of development is it. That is one way. And the other way is directly a question can be given, this situation belongs to which part of the development or which type of the development. So like this, the questions may be appearing for the types of development. Next, we will go to see what is the concept of growth. But if you are seeing, most of the times it will be seen growth and development, or sometimes growth and development is used synonymously. But in these psychological aspects, growth is different from the development. As we have already discussed, development includes everything, that is both quantitative and qualitative aspects. That is like it also deals about the physical development, emotional development, social development, all this comes under the development. But when terms of growth, growth means the change in different parts of the human body, the ability to work. You can see the image very rightly shows the height of the child is measured, and you can see the child has grown in the height. So this is a physical aspect and it comes under the growth. So growth, the word growth usually takes only the aspect of physical aspect. It will not consider the development or the overall change in other aspects of the individual's life. And growth mostly refers to the quantitative changes. That means they are measurable. So if we are seeing the child's height, we can say the child was like 2 feet, then the child has grown to 3 feet, then by the time he or she has reached adolescence, the child has grown to 5 feet. So this is a quantitative change and this is a growth. But the same way, the weight of the child also can be measured. So all these quantitative aspects comes under the concept of growth. Now let us see what are the principles of growth and development. So in terms of seated, if you are seeing, this is the most important concept, that is principles of growth and development. So the first principle is principle of change. So simply change means which is continuously changing or which is continuously like changing. For example, if you are seeing, the child's thoughts when the child was 3 years will not be the same when the child is 20 years old. In the same way, the emotions which the child undergoes when the age of 3 or 2 will not be same with what the adult is undergoing at the age of 50 years. So there is always change in terms, not only in terms of the emotions but also in different aspects like moral values, everything. The child may learn and pick different aspects and the change will always be there. So it is not that it is fixed, but it will be changing. Then principle of predictability. So what does it mean by predicting? We are able to guess. For example, if you have observed, when you go to the doctor with a small baby, the doctor will ask, did the baby reach the milestone? Was the baby able to crawl? Was the baby able to sit? So at this particular age, we have a indicators like this baby can start sitting, this baby can start crawling, this baby starts to walk. So there is always a prediction made. But also we have to keep in mind that this may not be always same for every child. Maybe the order followed will be same, but each child may or may not reach the milestones at the same particular time. That is the principle of predictability. Then principle of individual differences. So if you see, different children in your classroom might have different experiences or different ways of solving things. For example, you are teaching a maths concept and you see some children will actually finish the chapter very quickly and they will be waiting for you to give the next problem. But you see some children will be struggling to do the same problem in your class. So you can observe there are individual difference between each child. So that is the principle of individual differences. That is, each child's development and growth will have different levels and different times. And then principle of general to specific. So it is like if you observe, it is very like the child first in general, the child will start to say his or her emotion, just some word, something. But then when it comes to the specific, when the slowly the age is going, the child will get the ability to make sentences, make clear cut explanations for whatever they are talking, logical reasoning, all this will be developing. So the development process is from general to specific. Then the next important one is principle of significance of early development. What does this mean by early development? So, the experiences which the child gets in the early years of their development will have a huge impact on the later life. This is what our different researchers have said, and even our policy documents have spoken about. So, that is the reason why we are emphasizing more on the early childhood care and education. So, how it is? For example, if we see the child who has got a good environment from the childhood will have mostly may have better skills developed in the coming years. In the same way that it also can be happen that if the child has not received enough nutrition, enough good environment in the early stages, may also have a back understanding or back place in the later stages of the life. That is principle of significance of early development. In the early years, the brain development will be faster and the emotions, the connections will be formed. So it is always important for the child to have a nurturing environment at the early stages of the life. So these are few principles of growth and development. There are a few more principles. The principle of continuity, that is the process of development will not stop after certain age. It always continues from, it starts before our birth and continues even after it continues till the death. So the continuity is always followed in different aspects of the development. Then principle of sequential development. Sequential means in a particular order. For example, the newborn baby may not start talking or making sentences. So before talking words, the newborn baby first will say blabbering or the small sounds the baby will be making. Then the baby talks small words. So there is a sequence that is followed. Or when the baby starts, the baby directly will not start walking, but before that the baby first crawls, then baby tries to sit, then baby tries to stand with support, then walk with support, then walk individually. So like this, there is always a sequence in the development. Then principle of cephalocaudal development. This is the next principle that talks about the development from head to toe. That is, first before standing or before getting the hold on the baby toes or legs, the baby first tries to maintain coordination with the neck or the head. So the development will always be from head to toe. The next one is principle of proximodistal development. So this development means the development proceeds from center of the body towards the outer parts. For example, if we see students, first the baby or the student will start to move the hands before starting to write. Then they will learn more specific actions like holding a pencil, holding a pen, then they get the control over their fingers. First the shoulder will be moved, then the child will try to get the hold on the fingers, so that they will move only the fingers to write. So this is how the development, this is another principle of the development. Then next is principle of integration. So the term integration means clubbing or integrating different aspects. So the child will learn small skills and will try to integrate it, and this is the principle of integration. As we have already discussed in one example earlier, how the language and speaking, writing skills are developed. So that is a similar example can be given for the principle of integration. For example, the child is learning how to do cycling. The child will try to first learn the balance, then how to pedal, then the hand and the eye coordination. All this are different sub skills the child learns and integrates it to riding a bicycle. So these are the principles of growth and development. Now we have seen almost 10 principles of growth and development. So these also can be asked in seated directly, like which among the following will not be the principles of growth and development, or a situation can be given and can be asked which principle of growth and development is seen in that situation. These kind of questions will come in the seated exam. Next we will see what are the differences between growth and development. First, in terms of meaning, if we see, growth refers to only the increase in size, height or the quantity. But when we see in the development, it refers to the overall qualitative and quantitative changes. So what does that mean by qualitative? Qualitative means which is not quantified or which is not measured, like the emotional intelligence of the child, the emotions, how the child is feeling. This may not be measured directly, but the height, weight of the child can be measured. Then the nature, if you see, the growth is mostly quantitative, but development is both qualitative and quantitative. Then duration. After certain age, the growth of the individual will be stopped. Like for example, the height. After certain age, we will not be growing taller anymore, or we will not become shorter also. The duration is stopped. But when it comes to the development, it is always continuous or it is lifelong. As we have already discussed in the principles of development, the development is a continuous process. It is principle of continuity. So there is always a continuous part. Then scope. When in growth, it is limited to the physical aspects of the body, but when it comes to the development, it not only encompasses the physical aspects but also the mental, emotional, social and moral aspects of the human being. Then when it comes to the measurable aspects, growth can be measured in terms of centimeter cages, but it is very difficult to measure or observe behaviors of the child. Then examples of growth includes increase in the height, muscle and weight. But in the development, if we see how the improvement in the thinking skills, social skills, values, also the critical thinking, all these comes under the developmental aspects. These are the few differences between growth and development. Also, one more point I wanted to make it clear is development is not reversible. It is irreversible. Once the change is always irreversible. It is not reversible. That means once you have grown taller, you will not be coming back. Next, the factors affecting the growth and development. So there are two factors that are affecting the growth and development. Firstly, it is heredity and environment. We are going to discuss very detailedly about environment and heredity in our coming videos also. But here let us have a general or a common understanding of that. In heredity, that is, it is nature. You might have seen nature versus nurture. So nature means it is the genetic makeup that you have inherited from your parents or the ancestors. It determines your physical features like height, color, body structure, and also influences intelligence, temperaments, interests, and certain abilities or aptitudes. It always provides a biological blueprint for your development. But what is environment? It includes all the external conditions and experiences you are getting. The family love, care, nutrition, education, culture, peers, social and community affect development. A good simulating experiences the child gets, they will develop more properly. A poor environment may hinder the development. So nature is the biological aspect and nurture or the environment is the all the external conditions around the child. So and always the development is a result of both heredity and the environment. So simple we have to remember means heredity is gives the potential for the child, but environment will help in realizing that potential and upskilling that. For example, if there is a if both parents are from a sports background, the child may have innate ability to play that sport, but the conducive environment the child gets, the child will become more skilled and will achieve more in the sports. Next. Then the next, these are the factors affecting the, we have seen what are the factors affecting the development. Now we will see what are the stages of human development. First is the infancy stage, that is from 0 to 2 years. This is considered after the birth. So at this stage, if you observe, the child is completely dependent on the others for all the needs. That may be for hunger, everything, cleaning, everything. The child is dependent on the other people, like the family, on the most. Then, but at this stage, the physical growth is very rapid. They develop the senses, motor skills, language and emotions begins in this stage. Then the concept of trust, love and security are important for the healthy development of the child. What are the examples, or what are the things which we can observe in this infancy stage? Crying, smiling, they'll try to grab objects, they'll try to recognize mother's voice, they will try to recognize father's voice, they'll try to start walking, they will be playing. All this will come under the infancy stage. Next is the childhood stage, that comes from 2 to 12 years. But again, this childhood stage can be further divided into early childhood and late childhood. So in early childhood, it covers from 2 to 6 years, and late childhood covers from 6 to 12 years. If we observe in this particular stage, the children will become more independent. The physical growth continues and motor skills improve. The language development happens, the social skills are developed, more emotional bondings are formed, the curiosity is more now. The learning and peer interactions are very important at this stage. For example, here the child talks, run, play, they make friends, they read, problem solving. Here the problem solving refers to very simple problems which the child encounters in their daily life. These are first two stages of the human development: infancy stage, that is 0 to 2 years, childhood stage, that is 2 to 12 years. The questions in this section may come like, they may give you the in the options you may get different age gaps, and they may ask you which this belongs to childhood, which belongs to adolescence, which belongs to the adulthood. These kind of questions may come from this topic. Next we have adolescent stage and adulthood stage. In the adolescent stage, that is 12 to 18 years. So this is considered as a transition from childhood to the adulthood, and here the child will have the physical growth, and there will be lot of changes in the body, and emotional changes, mood swings are very common in this stage, and the abstract thinking, decision making and reasoning, search for identity, these start in the adolescence age. And also peer relationships and social acceptance play a very vital role in the adolescent stage. The examples here are the students try to express their opinions, they study, they form friendships, they make choices, they set their goals, they try to see what they wanted to be. All this choice making starts in the adolescent stage. Then adulthood stage, that is 18 years and above. Here the physical growth actually slows down and it is more stabilized. And now full development of the physical, mental and social abilities will be taking place. And here after reaching the adulthood, the person will try to take the responsibility of the family, work and society, and they try to make independent decisions for the future, and also they contribute to the well-being of the self, family and the community. Examples: working, building relationships, raising a family, career development and social participation. So these are four broader stages of human development: infancy, childhood, adolescent stage and adulthood stage. We will see what is meant by learning. Learning is a permanent change in behavior occurs as a result of experience and practice. So now what is the relation between learning and development? If we see learning and development both are closely linked and which are interdependent on each other. First, how if we see the development, how it influences the learning. The child have to be biologically and psychologically ready for learning. For example, the child when enters the school, we slowly teach them first the alphabets, then we come for the words. We see age appropriate learning. So that is how the learning of development and stages of development is very important for any teacher. Next, the child learns according to their stage of development, and maturity of body and mind make learning possible and effective. For example, the same concept which the child is learning in class 5 may seem little difficult for the child, but the same concept if the child sees in class 7th, it feels very easy. So the maturity and the mind maturity is making the learning possible and effective. Then higher the level of development, better is the learning. Next, how learning influences the development. It is a vice versa. Learning helps in growth of the knowledge, skills and attitudes. It also strengthens the thinking, reasoning and problem solving abilities. The child also develops interests, values, emotions and social behaviors with learning. It brings improvement in all aspects of the personality. So if we see, there is a relationship between learning and development. So development prepares the child for learning and learning leads to the further development. So the both are continuous and interdependent process. And if we see, learning is always an active process, it is based on the experiences. Learning is always based on the experiences and practice. It brings a change in behavior and abilities of the child. So as by now we have understood what is concept of development, what are types of development, what are the stages of development, principles of development and what it means by learning and what is the relationship between learning and development. Now we will go ahead and solve some questions. First question is, development refers to. If you see, there are four options given. Increase in body weight only, a series of progressive changes towards maturity, temporary changes in behavior, growth in height only. So if you are seeing the four options, you can actually rule out A and D because the word only is given and it is written body weight and height, which we know both comes under the growth aspects of the development or physical development. So that is one thing. And temporary changes in the behavior. So this may not be the right option because they are saying it is very temporary changes in the behavior. But if you see the option B, a series of progressive changes towards the maturity. As we have already seen, development means a change from the growth to the maturity. So that is the correct answer for this question. Next question, which type of development includes thinking and reasoning? I have already said when we are discussing about the types of development, these kind of questions will be coming, which they may ask you directly giving an example which kind of development it is. So here they are talking about thinking and reasoning, but if you see the options, there are four: moral development, cognitive development, language development and physical development. So when it comes to thinking and reasoning, moral development will not be an answer because it's not talking about the ethics or the values. Then language development also will not be an answer because it is more related to the communication aspect. Then physical development is more related to the height, weight of the person. So the answer is cognitive development, which includes thinking and reasoning. The next question is, which of the following is an environmental factor affecting the development? Height, eye color, school and community and genetic makeup. If we see height, eye color and genetic makeup, All these three are biological aspects which have nothing to do with the environment around the student, environment around the child. So this is not a factor that will be affecting. So what is the other option? That is school and community. This is an external factor and it is an environmental factor that is affecting the development. This height, eye color and genetic makeup are all biological factors that can be considered as nature aspect, not the environmental aspect. So the correct answer is school and community. The next question, this is a little different question. A child has good intelligence potential but performs poorly due to lack of support at home. This shows that. So there is a small situation given, that is a child has a good intelligence potential, that is a child's IQ is very high, is very good, but it is observed that in the school the child is performing poorly. But the reason for that poor performance is lack of support at home. Now we will see what are the options given. Heredity alone determines the development. Environment alone determines the development. Development is influenced by heredity and environment together. Intelligence cannot change over time. So, if heredity alone will determine the development, the child's IQ is already high, so the performance also should be high, but it is given the performance is poor. So, that means that is not the correct answer. Next, we have environment alone determines the development. If it is only the environment, but the IQ of the child is already high, that is not a result of the environment. So, option B is also not a correct answer. The next one is intelligence cannot change over the time. But it is observed in some studies that intelligence also have changed over the time, or it is nurtured over the time with the conducive environment. Then the only left option is, for us, development is influenced by heredity and environment together. That is the correct answer. If we see, all the four questions we have solved with the elimination of the options. But this is not only the way to solve the questions, but we can also directly pick the correct answer. But here, to make it easier, I am choosing a way where I am eliminating the options and then coming to the correct answer. So these are the few example practice questions that can be asked in the seated paper. Now let us discuss about some PYQs, that is previous year's questions, which have already come in other seated exams which had happened in the previous years. First question is, which of the statements cannot be considered as feature of learning? First, we will try to read all the four options. Learning is something that occurs as a result of certain experiences. Study of behavior is learning. Unlearning is also a part of learning. Learning is a process that mediates behavior. If you see the options, all the options are related to learning. But if you are reading the question again, you have to highlight that the following statements cannot be considered. That means it should not be the feature of learning. If you see the options A, C and D, all refers to the features of learning. But if you see study of behavior is learning, that is not a feature of learning. So the answer is B. Study of behavior is learning. This is not a feature of learning. Next question. Human development is based on certain principles. Which of the following is not a principle of human development? Again, here also we have to see the word not. That means in the four options given, there will be something that is not a principle of human development. If we see the first option, it is sequentially. Already we have seen when we are discussing the principles of human development, that is the principle of sequentiality. That is always the human development happens in a sequence. Then the second option is general to specific. This is also discussed when discussed about the principles of human development. Then reversible. Then continuity. Continuity is also a principle of human development because development will not stop at a particular age. It will continue till our death. So the remaining option is reversible. So reversibility is not a principle of human development. So the correct answer is reversible. It is not a principle of human development. The next question is, which one of the following statement best sums up to the relationship between development and learning? Development is independent of learning. Learning trails behind development. Learning and development are synonymous terms. Learning and development are interrelated in complex manner. If you see the development, when we have discussed the relationship between development and learning, we have seen they are interdependent. One depends on the other. So, but the first option says development is independent of learning. So, that is an incorrect answer. Learning trails behind development. But we also discussed learning helps in development and development also helps in learning. So, that is not trailing behind. So, option 2 is also not correct. Then the third option, that is C, learning and development are synonymous terms. But we have seen both are different, development and learning. So the answer C is also incorrect. The fourth option, learning and development are interrelated in a complex manner. This is a correct answer for this question. Now let's go to the next question. Development starts from. The options are post childhood stage, prenatal stage, the stage of infancy, pre-childhood stage. Can you guess the correct answer? Post childhood stage means it is after the childhood, that is adolescence age, but development starts before that. Then the prenatal stage, that is even before the birth. Then the stage of infancy, that is after birth to 2 years. Then pre-childhood stage, that is 2 to 6 years of age. But we have learned that development starts before birth and continues till the death. So for that statement, the correct answer would be B, that is prenatal stage. Development starts from prenatal stage and continues till the death. Next question. Which one of the following statements about development is correct? Now let's read the 4 options given. Development occurs at different rate among different individuals. Development occurs at a very fast pace from birth till adolescence and then it stops. Development proceeds from birth to adolescence in a forward manner, then it goes backward. Developmental changes go forward in a straight line. Now let us start from the option D. Developmental changes go forward in a straight line. The changes in the development are continuous but are not always in a straight line. That is one thing. So, the option D is incorrect. And option C, development proceeds from birth to adolescence in a forward manner, then it goes backward. The development is a continuous process and it is irreversible. So, there is no going backward. So, option C is also incorrect. Now, we will see option B. Development occurs at a very fast pace from birth till adolescence and then it stops. The word stops says that it is an incorrect option because the development is not going to stop. The principle of development says development is continuous. Then option A. Development occurs at a different rate among different individuals. This is the correct answer. The statement, if you observe, will talk about the principle of individual differences. So each person will have a different rate and of development. So the correct answer is development occurs at different rate among different individuals. The next question, which one of the following statements about principles of development is incorrect? This question is very similar to the previous questions, but let us see the options. Development takes place due to constant interaction between heredity and environment. Development depends on maturation and learning. Every child goes through stages of development, yet there are wide individual differences among children. Development is a quantitative process which can be measured precisely. If we go back to the question and see, the word incorrect is to be highlighted. So in the options we have to search which option is incorrect, not the one which are correct or which are talking about principles of development. If we see the first option, that is development takes place due to constant interaction between heredity and environment, is correct. Then the development depends on maturation and learning, that is also correct. Every child goes through stages of development, but still there are individual differences in the child, that is also correct. So the fourth option, that is development is a quantitative process which can be measured precisely, is the incorrect option, because development is both quantitative and qualitative process. So it cannot be measured precisely. So the correct answer is option D. The next question, which one of these is a principle of child development? The development occurs due to interaction between maturation and experience. Development can accurately predict the pace of each individual child. Experience is the sole determinant of development. Development is determined by reinforcement and punishment. They are asking which is the principle of child development. If you see the options B, C and D are incorrect, and the only correct option is development occurs due to interaction between maturation and experience. The next question is, match the following principles of development with their correct descriptions. So if you see, this is a match the following kind of a question. The left side is principle and right side is description. So first principle they have given is proximodistal trend. Then second one is cephalocaudal trend, inter-individual differences and intra-individual differences. And the other side, if you see, there are 5 options given. That is different children develop at different rates. Head to toe sequence. In a single child, the rate of development can vary from one domain of the development to the other. From the center of the body to outwards, progression from simple to complex. These are the 5 options given. But if you go and see the answers, that is options given for your answers, you see the 5 is not included in any of the option. That means the 5 need not be considered. So now we will try to identify what is a principle and description from the options. Proximodistal trend. What does proximodistal trend talks about? It talks about from the center to the of the body to the outwards. That is A. All answer is 4. If you see the options B as well as D have that A as 4. Now we will see what is cephalocaudal trend. That is cephalocaudal trend is head to toe sequence. So that is B is 2. Then you have inter-individual differences. Inter-individual differences means differences between two individuals or different individuals. So different children develop at different rates is the correct answer. So C is 1. Then intra-individual differences. Intra-individual means it is in the same child you will have a differences in development of different domains, like physical development may be in different level, and moral development may be different level, socio emotional may be different level. So in a single child the rate of development can be different or vary from each domain. So D is 3. If you observe here, both B and D are correct. So the option can be either B or D. Now, so far we have discussed about what is a concept of development, concept of growth, and we have also seen what are the principles of development and growth, and we have also seen the differences between growth and development, and we have also learned about the nature versus nurture and the interrelationship between development and learning. So these are some of the practice questions and previous year's questions we have discussed. So we are at the end of this video. We have learned about the concept of development. We have learned about the concept of growth. What are the principles of growth and development? We have also seen what are the factors that are affecting the development. And we have also seen how learning and development are related. And we have solved some practice questions as well as the previous year's questions. Now we are at the end of this video. Thank you all, and we will meet in the next video with the next concept.